Hey gang, Ronan here. As you can see, today it's not a game replay. I'm in the port and I'm just trying to provide some general information for players, some new, some who've been around a long time but still have no idea about what I'm about to tell you, uh, in an effort to try to make the game a little bit better for you if possible. Now, there are a lot of settings in this game, and some of them people just don't know about. Wargaming doesn't, at least in my opinion, do a very good job of kind of explaining all these things. And to be fair, they're constantly putting out a lot of new things, so it is easy to lose track of some of the more basic things that are a part of the game. So what I'm going to cover today are some of the things that you can change in terms of settings in your game that may add a little bit more information to what you're getting from the UI while you're playing the game. So where do we start? Well, you can use the escape key, or you can go up here to the little gears in the upper left corner. Click that, and you're going to go into settings. Now, your settings are going to be set based on the machine that you have and the monitor that you have. Kind of what is it capable of? I have a fairly decent machine, runs pretty quickly, so my settings are high, very high, maximum, and it doesn't have any trouble. You will need to, if you've never played with any of this, you will need to make some changes to these graphic settings. Maybe run a quick co-op, see how it runs for you, and then maybe you step it back down to where it runs well again. You can see in the upper left-hand corner when you're playing the game, it's usually right around here, your frames per second. And if that drops down really low, you're going to want to change things and drop these down lower to work your CPU and graphics card a little bit less hard. Now, having said that, which essentially amounts to you're going to want to play with these settings in order to get the best looking game that you can without compromising the frame rate too much. We can go into audio. There are different voiceover modifications that are built into the game. You can see I've got high sound quality. You can see that they're high, low, ultra. I actually like high the best, but maybe you like ultra. And again, it's going to depend in part on the type of machine that you have and how well it can do these things. Here's where you can adjust all of your volumes. And at various times, depending upon what I was doing, sometimes I move these around. Sometimes I don't want to hear the guns as much as I would normally. I use National VoiceOver Plus. You can see that there are a lot. If you've never played with any of these, I recommend it. Again, you can jump in a co-op and in 5 minutes you can see whether or not it's something you like. I like the National VoiceOver Plus because whatever ship I'm playing, whatever nationality it happens to be, that's the voices that I hear. I hear things in that nationality, whatever that language happens to be. You can adjust chat volume and microphone sensitivity if you're using the in-game chat. I don't, but you can play with that here. It's not that I never have. I just currently generally am using Discord or the ICOP Discord. And then we get into controls, which I think is probably the most important thing. Some of these are going to be set by default. You may or may not be an invert the Y-axis person. When I pull the mouse down in the game, or toward me in the game, I like to look up. When I move the mouse away from me or up, I like it to look down. That's what this is. In part, it's going to depend upon, maybe what games you started playing on a computer. For me, most of them were that way, so that's what I prefer. But that's where that's at. I always like to start the battle completely zoomed out. They made some changes, I don't know, half a dozen or so updates ago, maybe a little bit longer. And it doesn't start as zoomed out as it used to. And they also changed it so that when you've got torpedoes active, when you're looking through if you've got your torpedo weapons active, you're much closer to the ship than you used to be. But this will start to zoomed out. This tracks the locked target, which is super handy. I always recommend checking that box. Free look, you can see there is a right mouse button. A lot of people don't know about that, but I recommend using that a lot. And what this box check does is if you use the right mouse button and then you look around, you look to the left, you look to the right, just to kind of see what's what. When you let go of the right mouse button, it'll automatically put the camera right back where it was before you push the button. It's nice. These are, well, your mileage may vary on these, but I check these boxes. I didn't play with these too much. Here you can adjust your mouse sensitivity and select your crosshair. I'll get back to that in a minute. Terrain hit indicator. This is what's going to make that sound, and make little images on your screen when you're about to run into an island. I leave that on because I like to know, but I turn off the collision avoidance system because that's what will actually take control of your ship and turn it. And I don't like that. I don't recommend using that because sometimes in my experience, whatever the dumbest possible change of course was, that's what it'll do. So I turn that off. And then alternate interface mode. Now you can see that there's off, adapted, and full. And adaptive and full are much better than off. And you can see I've got it on full. This does use a little bit more in terms of computer resources because this is going to show you information like what all the ships on the mini-map are. You can have information about the ship itself and using some mods, their weapon systems. I mean, there's tons of stuff. There's a lot of information that if you've got this set to full, that you will get in the game that you won't otherwise have. I like to display team lineups. I like to show both the main battery and the torpedo tube load indicators. That's usually going to be right around here when you're in the game. I like to see the smoke screen boundaries, so I know exactly how far I can go in the smoke. I like to show the smoke screen timer, so I know exactly when I need to get moving to get out of it. And checking this box allows you to see all the different scenarios that are available in the training room. If you've ever used that, it's really nice. I don't skip the video at game launch because it's going to take the same amount of time, and it doesn't load any faster. I use the counter for damage upon my spotting. That'll show up here in the game. I use the counter for potential damage. It's going to show up in the same spot. One is right on top of the other. I don't have the language bar checked. I don't show time in port. It's basically just your clock, whatever's on your PC, it's going to show up in the port. And I do use battle chat. And then what the battle chat does is that allows the messages. You'll see the box over here when you're in the game. Now, crosshair, I said I'd get back to that. So I select that, and you'll see that got static, which I used for a long time. And that's what is the default in the game. I really recommend the dynamic. You can see I've got type 1, but I need to switch that because I just had an update back to Nomogram Classic. Save those changes. Now, why do I recommend that? Let me get back here where I was. I recommend that because that is, in my opinion, the best aiming tool in the game. That particular crosshair and that particular style, dynamic. Now, what does it mean by dynamic? Well, it means that when you're using this, you can see this will give you some idea of how this looks with different backgrounds. And it's very easy to see in pretty much any conditions. Some of the crosshairs are more difficult to see when you have different backgrounds. And so this one you can see is very easy to see no matter what. Now, what does it mean to have a dynamic crosshair? It means that if, let's say that's our aim point, and suddenly we move the aim point to here, you're going to see these contract. Because what this is showing you is roughly how many seconds it's going to take for your shells to get to your target point. Now, let me explain that. Let's say there's a ship over here, and he is moving in this direction. If, when you're aiming, you're going to see in the game, you're going to see a little thing right here that's a number followed by a little letter S. And what that is telling you is how many seconds it's going to take for the shell that you fire to get to that point that you're aiming at. So what you do, let's just say that says 5.4 seconds. What you want to do is you want to put your target right about here, which is about 5.4 seconds. This is counting. And then pull the trigger. If the middle of the ship that you're shooting at is right here, and he's going straight across here, when you pull the trigger, this is 5.4 seconds, and he's right here, your shell should land right about the middle of his ship. And if you've never tried it, it takes maybe an hour to get used to. You just load up some co-op games and go to town. But it is really, really nice. Now, if something is farther away and you're zoomed out farther, you're going to see these numbers. These are going to contract. The space between them is going to contract, and suddenly there'll be a 7, an 8, a 9, a 10, a 12, 15, depending upon how far away something is. And if it takes 12 seconds for your shells to get there, and remember that information is going to be right here when you're in the game, you're going to see that this will go out to 15 or 16. And you'll still be able to do the same thing. If it says 12.2 seconds, these numbers again, the space between them is going to contract, maybe 12's right here. If that's where the middle of the ship you're targeting is, and it says 12.2 right here, and it says 12.2 right here, that's where you want to aim. Pull the trigger, that ship's going to move, it'll take 12.2 seconds, and the shell should land about the middle. Now, it's going to take you a little bit of getting used to looking at this information, and then finding the correlating number here, but it doesn't take that long, and it is a huge help. I guarantee you that once you get used to it, it will help you land more shells. Then the trick becomes, what do you do if the ship is coming toward you a little bit, or if it's moving away from you a little bit? And you have to adjust your elevation a little bit in order to compensate for that. Also, you have to compensate with the numbers. Now, you may be asking yourself, Ronan, why are there numbers on the bottom as well? Good question. These numbers on the top are set up for a ship that is moving approximately 30 knots. So if you're dealing with, say, a French destroyer, it's going to be moving much faster, and you'll need to do some quick math in your head, and you'll need to adjust accordingly. Maybe this says the shell's going to take 4.2 seconds to get there. If you're looking at a Kleber that's maybe moving 50 knots, that's quite a bit more than the 30 knots this is scaled for. Instead of this point, maybe you want to drop down here, which is about the difference between 30 and, say, 50. You'll get the hang of it. It doesn't take that long, but it is a much better way of aiming. Now, the numbers on the bottom, to get back to that. This is for a ship that might be moving more at like 20 knots. And that's going to be a lot of lower tier and mid-tier U.S. battleships, things along those lines. So this allows you a quick reference for something that you think might be moving closer to 20 knots. So you can use, in those cases, you can use these numbers on the bottom. That's it. I hope you found this helpful. I really appreciate you spending a couple minutes here. If you have any questions or you want some further clarification, hit me up in the comment section below. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.